Hello and welcome to another edition of our Unmute podcast, the podcast that is raising the volume on the whispered conversations in our communities. My name is Angela Infalaja, and with me are my co-hosts, Lata Sharma.
Hello.
Hi. Raquel McKee.
Hi, everybody.
And Yolande Robertson Green.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, ladies.
Hi.
Well, ladies, do we not have a treat for our listeners today? Over the last few weeks, as you know, we've had a few guests on. We'd love to have women on to talk about their stories. And particularly over the International Women's Day edition, we had 6 amazing ladies come along and tell us their stories about how they are choosing to challenge in their various areas. Well, today we have another guest on who's going to be telling us about her life story and how she has been challenging status quos in her chosen field. And so please welcome with us the beautiful Lata Sharma.
Woohoo!
Hey,
everybody. Hi. Welcome. Thank you.
Hi,
I'm
Lata.
so excited. I tell you, I'm so excited to be here, and I really, I'm just honored that you've asked me. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for coming. We're excited to have you too, and we're looking forward to a very rich conversation today. So, without further ado, now for the purposes of our listeners who are listening or who are watching on our various platforms who do not know you, please do tell us in your own words, who is Lata Sharma?
Okay, well, it's nothing very mysterious. I was born and reared in Northern Ireland at the start of the Troubles in Northern Ireland. My parents came to Northern Ireland 10 years before the Troubles started. And I do believe there were people who from the Indian community who had come here before that even. But my father chose to come here, and I was the youngest of 6 children. And so I got away with a bit more than what my older siblings would have got away with. And one of the things I was lucky to be able to do was enter into an industry where sort of girls of my culture would not have been seen as a respectful thing to enter into. But I was the only brown kid in the school. From the time I entered school in P1 right the way until about 3rd year of high school. And you know what, it didn't really make a lot of difference in primary school. And the funny thing is, I got to high school and I kind of figured out I was brown when I got there. But up until that point, it really wasn't an issue. I never really thought about it. So from that point of view, life was pretty good. I went into an industry, as I say, which is the arts, into acting, into music, into theatre, into the media. And each one left me thinking differently because of where I was born and raised. Because as you can tell, I am local. I'm a Northern Irish woman. My mannerisms, my sense of humor, everything about being a Northern Irish woman has made me the woman I am today. And I pay tribute to the community that I was born and raised into for that reason, because, you know, with all the complications that we do have an incredibly good sense of humor. But I went into the media, I went into the acting field first, should I say, and singing. Started off singing in folk festivals, and that was quite a lot of fun because they weren't used to seeing a brown face like mine singing Mother Irish and I am Irish too, which kind of confused them quite a bit. And my dad loved that. My dad just used to think it was hilarious that I'd be singing these traditional songs, and he wouldn't watch his daughter up there competing with the rest of the kids. He would just look at the audience and just find it incredibly funny. So I think because of my dad, I have to be very grateful that he was a very liberal thinking man. He encouraged all of his children to be expressive and express their opinions and express their sort of opinions on politics or religion or, you know, philosophy or anything like that. So he was very much confident and stood by me as I went into these various industries and felt a great sense of pride. But as I say, it wasn't something that was normal within the community for girls to be seen to be doing those things. Never mind guys, we were expected to study, go to university, become doctors and lawyers and everything that, I think our heritage is, they want us to do, because they see education as the route out of poverty. And I understand that. And out of the 6 children, only one of us, my siblings, went to university, and that was an amazing thing. But that was the norm even back then for a lot of people and from working class communities. Only 1 or 2 managed to get to university. It was highly unusual for working class families and their children to all go to university. Now it's a much more common thing, but at that time it wasn't. So when I got into the theatre and acting, I started that probably when I was about 17, 18. And I also got to join a local band and sing in a pop band, which was like, oh my gosh, my mother was going to have a fit about it because, but as far as my father was concerned, it's singing. He didn't care. He wasn't thinking that I'd be singing in like some really dodgy clubs in Northern Ireland. He was just going, my daughter is singing. And
did he come with you to chaperone you, Lata?
No, but you know what my mother insisted on? The guys who asked me to sing in this band, guys, they were grown men with children and families and wives. My mother said, and I was only sort of 17 at the time actually. And my mother said, I want them to come to the house. Tell them they have to come to the house. I need to meet them. And I'm going, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. Right, okay. So I had to go to these grown men and say, my mummy wants to meet you. And they all were like, what? And I'm going, yeah, I can't do this unless my mummy meets you. And it was just like, they were just couldn't believe it. So they all came to the house to meet my parents. And my mum was like, looking at them, as parents from, I would have to say, even from your background, they look at them like they're judging and they're scarlet and they're sussing them out. And my mum was, just doing that. And I was going, oh, this is so embarrassing. But anyway, it worked. And she was still upset because up until that point, you were expected home at 9 o'clock. And here I was coming home at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Let me just jump in quickly, Lata, because that's a good segue for us as we begin to talk about, just your experiences in that field. Natasha, let me bring you in.
Yeah. Speaking of difference, Lata, you've had quite a varied career from acting to TV and radio presenting, as well as singing in the cover band. The media is one field that has a marked on the representation of people from ethnic minority backgrounds, like even now. So let alone decades ago when you were doing that. Can you describe what it was like as a young woman of Indian heritage trying to build a career in media in Northern Ireland?
It's a mixed bag. Ironically, I couldn't get theatre work because of my face didn't fit the stories based on the fact that it was always to do with the Troubles. So they couldn't put my face playing a Republican or a loyalist or a unionist or a nationalist, even though my voice fitted. So I had to then find a way of getting in somewhere where my face would fit, or I thought would fit. So then I fell into television presenting. And I started auditioning for television locally. And then nothing was happening, and I went to England. And obviously there's a lot more representation in England. Even at that time, there was representation in England. You had fantastic faces on screen. Trevor McDonald is obviously one of them, who is held in very high esteem. And I sort of did a little bit of work out there, and I managed to get a bit of work on satellite TV. And, I built up a little bit of experience. And then I needed to come home. And I came back home. And I sort of tried to get into the commercial station here. And I got a bit of work out of there. But again, it was kind of still and I don't think it's the people. I think it's the people within the system of hiring and firing.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't feel that you are going to be accepted by the audience, because I think the mistake we made is we always blame the audience, and we don't recognize the fact that it's not the people that are
It's
at
the
fault.
gatekeepers.
The gatekeepers.
The gatekeepers to it, and how they think. So I did that in commercial television here for a little while, and it was good. It was good experience. It was live TV. It was just introducing programs. I read the news a little bit. I didn't particularly enjoy that. Made a few mistakes in reading the news, because again, it's about stuff that was happening down south as well, and talking about the various sort of governments and the way they refer to their prime minister as Taoiseach. And I remember reading the news and having to ask the guy who'd written the news, because it went into an auto cue, what is that word, Taoiseach? And he went, Lata, do you not know that's Taoiseach? And I went, why would I know that? I said, I'm born and reared here. I don't know what such a difference is about, how they refer to their prime minister. And it's like this assumption that you should know, so I luckily I learned that very quickly, that it was Taoiseach. But little things like that I sort of kept in my memory, because I understand how that can affect how people look at you. Which is unfair. And then I left commercial TV, and then I joined our public service TV, BBC. I got an opportunity to audition for it, and I got my first gig with BBC Northern Ireland. And it was great. It was a massive learning experience. And I think I was lucky in that I was able to I wasn't being seen necessarily as someone of colour. I was just being seen as someone who's a bit of a nutcase, who was happy to give it a go. Terry Smith and Edward Smith were the two main people who gave me that job. And I learned to present. I learned to work with the cameraman. I learned on the hoof. And that was really, really fantastic. And then I was able to then put together a show reel. And then I just used to, in the good old days when we had VHSs, and you had your padded envelopes and you posted them everywhere to everybody, and you just hope one of them would land.
Yeah.
And then luckily I got my first gig on the holiday programme in BBC in London.
Yeah. You co-presented with Jill Dando, right?
Jill Dando was the anchor host. Oh, I wouldn't say I co-presented. I wouldn't even be worthy of being co-presenter. But I was one of the reporters on it, and it was an amazing opportunity. And I met Jane Lush at the time, who was the head of that particular program, and it was just amazing to have that experience. But again, family. I wanted to start a family. I got work then on radio too. And that meant nobody could see my face. They just heard me. So I was able to be completely free and easy about everything, and not have to refer to my ethnicity, because that's the whole point of belonging, is whenever you don't have to refer to it. You don't have to think about what your color is. You don't have to think about what religion you are. It's all about your character and not your color. And that's the principle of what being of belonging is. And I think we are striving towards that. We're getting there. But this is a very unique situation for such a little tiny place like Northern Ireland and all its experiences.
Well, I want to, if I may just jump in here, Angela, sorry. I want to just go back and ask you a question in terms of, you mentioned family, and we have had our chance to really read your story and to do our research. Of course, we had to. And so we realized that you've had a massive break in your career. And how did you manage that and back into the business now? How is that transition for you, the break and then getting back into things?
It was very, very difficult, I think, because that industry is very much about your ego, right? It's about being out there, showing yourself. It's all about you. It's about you putting your makeup on and being, the personality and everything. And suddenly you have to shut that down, because your babies don't care about your personality. They don't care what you got your makeup on. They're like, they want, they need. And it's also my husband, it was difficult because his job was not a 9 to 5 job. So, and mine was completely erratic, you know, because the industry is not, it's just life that certain industries are not family friendly. They just can't be, because the demands are about the public. It's about entertaining the public. It's about serving the public. So jobs that are about serving the public at large are not family friendly. And that to me is something that I was just had to accept. I couldn't send my children to, I didn't want to send them to a childminder or to those little play schools and stuff. And I wasn't cut out to be that kind of woman. And that was just it. You know, some women are fantastic, some women aren't. I think the thing is about embracing each other for what we can cope with, and not be judgmental on that. But it was a long break. I don't have any regrets whatsoever. I went back because my children are grown.
Was it about 20 years, wasn't it?
It was about 20 years, yes. I also was looking after my mother. My mother had Parkinson's disease. My father died just as my first child was born. And my mother had Parkinson's from then on. So it was a lot of, there was a lot of sort of stress in managing family, maintaining a marriage, which is hard because, you know, it's not a picnic by any stretch of the imagination. And then kids come along and it's like, what? You know, it's like waving to each other and going, hi, don't we know each other? You know, didn't we meet and fall in love and have lots of babies? You know, life takes over. So I don't have any regrets about keeping that the way it is. My kids are great. My daughters and my son are very sort of self-sufficient in many ways. And they encouraged me to go back.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
They said, Mom, you know, you got to go out and do this. You got to, you know, we're fine. You know, they said that for a few years, but I still didn't feel ready to sort of let go. Now I am happy to let go, and I then stepped into writing, which is something I was not ever thought I was capable of doing. My husband again encouraged me to do this. He says, you got to write, you got to write. And I suppose I'm, you know, referring back to my father, I'm very lucky I have good male sort of support, because you'll always get your support from your girlies. But when you get it from your guys, it's like even better, you know. And he encouraged me to write. And
Lata, I'm going to stop you there because we want to talk about your writing a little bit later on. But just before we get into that, I'm going to bring Raquel in just to talk about another aspect of your work.
Yes, I'm very interested in all of this, Lata, and we seem to have so much in common. You know, things like being in TV and theatre and all of that kind of stuff. Singing. Angela, she too sings. But I'm also interested in how you've been described as a cultural activist and about your role in the Ards and North Down Intercultural Forum. Can you tell us about that side of yourself?
Yeah, do you know, that's interesting because I have, as I was saying before, I keep little things locked in my head of little experiences, and I try to, you know, relate them to life and how we look and think and respond. Response is very important to the challenges we face. And do we respond in a positive way, or do we respond in a, you know, pointed, blaming kind of way? What is the best way to achieve that? So all of those things have been building up in my mind for actually since I had my kids. And I think it was around the time shortly after my mother passed away, I really needed to, I had us all building up inside of me. I was hearing things and seeing things and negativity, and I just thought I need to do something. So I got in touch with a gentleman called Jim Murdoch, who was I think the Good Relations Officer at the time in the Ards and North Down Council, before it became the Ards and North Down Council. Yeah. And I went to a meeting. He invited me to come and see an intercultural meeting, and I sat at the back and I just sort of like listened and observed. And from those observations, I felt compelled then to make myself part of that, because there was negativity at the table, and there was a sense of nobody having the confidence to express themselves, to push back against any negativity because they were fearful. And I wasn't content to see that happen because I knew most of the people around that table were there for good intentions and they needed support and not criticism.
Can I just quickly ask you, around that table, were there many brown and black people?
There was probably two people of color.
Okay.
And then there was me, and the rest were obviously staff who were representing, various departments within the council. And I kind of saw negativity, and I thought, you know what, I need to be part of this because I think because I was local as well. I tend to try and look at it
from both
not
sides.
In a single dimension. I tend to try and look at it from every angle. I know what it feels like to be racially abused. I know what it feels like to be, have the door sprayed. I've been there, done all that, and worse. But I also know that many of the people here are we're still adjusting to change from the Good Friday Agreement being signed, from the Troubles, and the fighting and all of the suffering and the pain that they had been through. So I was very conscious of what those people had seen. I had seen with them, the bodies and the scooping of torsos and people being obliterated. It was a very ugly time, and people were very traumatized from that time. So this was a new thing that they were trying to have to deal with. And it's not that they didn't want to deal with it. It's just that they needed help in how to go about doing it without feeling that they were doing something wrong and then would be accused of being, misrepresentative or racist or anything. And I thought, oh, that's not good, because I need to help them to bring these things together and try and see
the gap. Bridge the gap, as we'd like to call it.
Yeah. It's very important to me that's what the point of activism to me is. There's no point in being an activist if all you're going to do is create resentment and bitterness and divide and anger. The point of working together is to try and bridge those gaps and bring positivity and understanding from both sides of a discussion, or from the multifaceted sides of the discussion. So it's very important how you go about doing these things. And then that's when I got involved. And then by that stage, Donna Mackey was head of Good Relations. And, all of us came together and we started doing a Shared Voices program where we went into schools. And this was down around 2000, just before the referendum. And we continued the program. I wanted to do a workshop with the children where I wanted to challenge their perceptions. And get them to understand the difference between perceptions and facts. And that was a lovely, and also it was important for me, I must say, that when I went into this, because I became the chair of the Intercultural Forum shortly after that, I kind of felt it was important to let the children speak in whatever way or express themselves in whatever way they felt comfortable, without judgment. So if they used a word that was not particularly complimentary to or politically correct, I wasn't going to judge them. I was going to let them, because I had to appreciate that their environment they were in didn't necessarily know how to do those things, or didn't necessarily know how to articulate them. So I had to be patient. And if they did say something that was politically incorrect, I would politely explain why it would hurt someone. So I made sure that was a very important part of when we went into those schools, that we all understood that we mustn't get offended.
In relation to that, Lata, sorry to cut across you, but I was just wondering, from your interactions with the children, what would you say gave you hope for the future in terms of our future as an intercultural society? And maybe some of the things, if you can give me maybe say one thing that gave you hope, and perhaps one thing that gave you cause for concern. In other words, areas where we still need to focus on. Yeah.
Okay, well, one thing that gave me hope was when I did this workshop, which was basically about challenging perception, I would challenge the children. I would say, right, we have 4 corners of the room, A, B, C, D. I'm going to put a question to you, and I want you to give me the answer and go to which corner of the room. So if it's A is the answer, you think, you go here. And one of the questions was, what percentage of people are from ethnic minorities live in Northern Ireland? And some kids went, I said, is it 50%? Is it 25%? Is it 12%? Or is it 4%? And the kids would get up and they'd go. And some would end up 50%, right? Some would end up 25%. Some would end up 12. And 1 or 2 maybe ended up at 4, right? And I went, okay, that's fine, no problem. Because I was conscious of the fact that they may have heard something. They may have, they get perceptions based on who they're around.
Mm-hmm.
And also, they just didn't understand what the percent meant.
Yeah, I was about to say, did they even know what you were talking about?
Yeah, so you got to be fair to how they may not fully understand what it is. Yeah. So I then would go and I'd say to the ones in the 50% group, okay, I said, so kids, no problem. I said, just give me an idea of why you chose this. It just felt like it. I said, okay, so you feel it, but you don't know it, right? So we now understand the difference between feeling and knowing. So let's talk about 50%. What does 50% mean? It means half of the people in Northern Ireland are from ethnic minorities. So let's pretend your school is the society. That means half of your teachers and half of the children are all ethnic minorities. And then they go, oh, right, that doesn't sound right. I said, so every second person you walk past in your school is an ethnic minority. No. I said, well, where do you want to go? So then they would go to the 25%. And they'd go over there. And I said, okay, well, why did you pick 25%? And we break it down and we be patient and I explain. And by the end of it, by the end of the workshop, which was doing lots of this, these sort of little flickers of challenge, was to light up that information for them so they understood it. And by the end of it, I was complimenting them on the fact that they were so open to hearing this. They were so, they loved the fact that they had been challenged by this, because even the kids who went to the 4% didn't know that it was 4%. They just went there, right? So it was about trying to just have that conversation. And what the funny thing is, the way we did the program is myself and the other ladies would be introduced by Donna, and Donna would say, this is lady is going to talk to you. I want to ask you a few questions about what you think about. What do you think she eats? What do you think, what language is her first language? And they asked her, what job do you think she does? Some people said a cleaner, some people said a nurse, some people said a doctor, some people, just again, all about just about looking at someone. And what's her first language? And they would come out with French or Punjabi or whatever, right? It'd be another foreign language. And some of them would come out with English. And then where do you think she's from? And I'd be like, oh, she's from here, or she's from Pakistan or India or Arabia or blah, 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 or Spanish. I used to get Spanish, Portuguese, whatever. And then I would just sit there silently. And then I go, how you doing, kids? My name's Lata Sharma. And they just go, right? And I loved doing that because it was just like,
fantastic.
It was just insane. So, but I think it's important to do things with a sense of warmth and humor, to bring the people who may risk falling into the eyes and ears and earshot of people who are divisive. It's very important to use your warmth and humor to draw them away, to make them feel, I'm still being embraced by this woman. Yes, I might have said something, wrong. I might have said darky or packy, but I didn't mean it that way. I just didn't understand how to express myself.
It's important to extend grace because many times things are done out of ignorance or want of knowing a better way to do things. So it's important the way that we respond.
Do you know what's funny, Angela? That word in itself, I don't even like using that word ignorance because I think that's demeaning. For me,
fair point. Fair
you know
point.
what I mean?
Obviously,
I think
I'm
it's just,
talking about that from a perspective of not knowing a better way because you
yes,
haven't been exposed. If you
exactly.
haven't been exposed enough to different
Yeah.
cultures, then you're flapping about a bit. And we all, you go into a different society. It's the same way. We all have to learn to adapt,
Yes.
understand the language and ways and so on. Listen, rap
But
time is running away with us, and I want to
just
ask
one more
you.
thing. I quickly
Okay.
need to say to you when you said about that word, I totally agree with you. That word is the correct interpretation of what you gave. But the problem is when negative people take those words, they turn them into something ugly to throw
Good
at the
point.
person
Yeah.
and that's where the problem lies. So I try to rephrase those things in order to not, because they've become ugly words when they were not ugly words at the start. They were just a word that was used to express something.
Yeah.
And
No, that's so
we,
good. Thank
you
you.
know.
So I want to ask, because we're running out of time, but I really want to ask you about your new play. Okay.
Oh,
So
okay.
sausage wraps and onion bhajis, very tasty. But
Sausage.
what's it all about?
Okay.
Tell us quickly. We've
Well,
got a few minutes left.
it's basically a play based on my experiences of being a girl from a different cultural heritage, born into a community that is the divisions are so dominant within our society for those years of the Troubles, and how insignificant we were as a community, based on the fact that these people were going through terrible traumas themselves. It wasn't, and how you had to sort of weave your way around and duck and dive between being a British person or an Irish person or a nationalist or unionist, and you had to deal with sectarianism, deal with the racism. But then I was also going home and dealing with cultural clashes because of the freedoms that my friends were having that I was not allowed to have. So it was about, and being sympathetic to my mother, who was an immigrant woman who came here and spoke very little English, if any, was wearing different clothes, eating different food, speaking, looking different, and being in amongst all of these people and trying to figure out how to fit in. And my father being an extremely important part of how that integration was going to work for his family and what he was going to do, and how he extended his warmth to be completely embracing of the culture of the community here. And because of that, he was able to, they were then able to embrace him back because they didn't feel any threat to their identity. People we like our identities, we like our cultures, but when you come into a predominant culture of this sort of community, there has to be a certain amount of respect extended to it and their experiences and their histories. And once you are able to do that, I thought it was important to write about all of that.
Yeah. And just because we're fast running out of time, I want you to tell us. I know that we're in, things are still locked down at the moment, but when we are able to, where can we find this play? Where will it be?
Well, the play was due to be on in 2020. And unfortunately, with what has happened, it's not going to be. We're now in 2021. And obviously, with things happening within the theatre, I was hoping that because Jimmy Fay was the gentleman who, and the executive director of the Lyric Theatre, who had invited me to do this play. He liked it, which was really blew my mind. And I was so excited. And then, of course, this happened. And I'm hoping that I will get to do it at the Lyric Theatre as a one-woman show. I'm just hoping my menopause doesn't kick in to the point where my memory is completely gone.
You'll be fine. You'll be great. Listen, Lata, thank you so much for coming and just speaking with us today. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I'm sure my ladies, we've enjoyed this. Audience, we hope that you've enjoyed this too. And we just want to say thank you. We're looking forward and wishing you all the very best as your play does come out, and it will, and you will be fine, and it will be great, and we'll be cheering for you.
Thank you so much. And it's been an absolute honor being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a wrap for us for this edition. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you enjoyed it. And we just want to ask you to just continue to follow, to like, to subscribe, to comment. Please talk to us. We'd love to hear from you. And looking forward to our next episode. Before we close, I'm just going to give you, or rather ask Natasha, forgive me. Please, Natasha, please do give us all of the various platforms on which our listeners and our viewers can see us.
You can find us at On Mute Now on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you'd like to send us an email, you can do that at onmutenow1 @gmail.com, and also find us on YouTube on our own channel. If you're watching here right now, just go ahead, follow and subscribe. And if you're listening to us, you can also follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and everywhere fine podcasts are aired.
Done like a pro. Thank you very much, Natasha.
You're welcome.
All right. So until the next time, we're going to ask you to keep raising the volume on those whispered community conversations. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye, Lata. Thank you.